इग्नू के शिक्षण सामग्री की मैं बड़ी तारीफ कर रहा हूँ। साथ ही साथ इग्नू के अथॉरिटीज़ को मैं बधाई देता हूँ कि उन्होंने एक ऐसा मैसेज समाज को दिया कि जो लोग के माध्यम से अपनी डिग्री प्राप्त करके शिक्षा सुलभ करा रही है, मुझे बड़ी प्रसन्नता है कि मैं भी इग्नू का विद्यार्थी रहा हूँ और वहाँ से मैंने एमबीए किया। आज के सूचना प्रौद्योगिकी के युग में इग्नू की भूमिका बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है। ऐसे देश में जहाँ के हम अभी शर्मिंदामता को बढ़ाने के लिए, शिक्षा का स्तर बढ़ाने के लिए इग्नू का प्रयास सराहनीय है। आज दूरसंचार के माध्यम से, इंफॉर्मेशन टेक्नोलॉजी के जितने इक्विपमेंट्स हैं उनके माध्यम से इग्नू जन जन तक शिक्षा पहुंचा रही है। मुझे अत्यंत प्रसन्नता है इस बात को आप लोगों के बीच में संदेश देते हुए। आप लोगों को बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
Dear learners and viewers, welcome to this session. Myself, Dr. G. Uma. Today's topic is gender roles in agriculture. This topic is part of the course Gender Dynamics in Agriculture, that is MGS 042. In this course, the entire course explain about gender roles in agriculture and allied sectors. This course specifically talk about whether the women have an access, control over resources, knowledge, skills, and also do they have decision making capacity with specifically with regard to agriculture and its allied sectors. As well as this course talks about the occupational hazards. What are the occupational hazards the women they are facing in the agriculture and allied sector? These are the broad learning objective of this course. The course first unit is about the gender roles in agriculture. That first unit is today we are going to discuss about it. Even though if the women are contributing so much for the agriculture sector, do they get paid on par with male members? If they don't get paid on par with male members, what is the reason? By looking at the women's contribution in agriculture and its allied activities, what are the efforts the government need to take to acknowledge their roles? Not only to acknowledge their roles, specifically they make the women as a part of the agricultural sector, because they are predominantly the large producer of the food and other agricultural commodities to address the food security of the country. As we all know, the women are an integral part of the agricultural production sector in India. As we all know that the women, they play a key role in the agricultural development. They contribute in the food production, nutritional security, as well as their roles are incredibly realized. Many of the scientists, agricultural scientists, as well as the feminist economists, they have documented women's role in agriculture. Even though, for example, I discussed about and I have mentioned about the drudgery reduction. But even though agriculture as a sector, it is gender neutral, but it is not resource members. Most of the time the women, they may not be able to access and control over the resources. Even if we talk about technology, specifically with regard to agriculture field, if we talk about that technology is gender neutral, still most of the technology due to the like skill as well as education use their drudgery. women may not be able to use those technology due to the existing patriarchy as well as socialization process. As we all know that the role of women as the producers of goods has been underestimated and considered supplementary role rather than leading role. This mystification specifically, even though women considered as the producers of agricultural goods, still they are considered as an supplementary. Their role is considered as supplementary rather than leading role. This mystification has to be changed, and society needs to treat women as agents of change. This is very important. Based on our discussion, the learning outcome of today's session is to discuss the women's contribution in agriculture, and we will talk about the role played by women in agriculture, as well as specifically today's session we will talk about the agriculture, as well as we discuss about the work participation rate. Let women in both public and private spaces. When we talk about gender roles, why do we talk about gender roles? The gender roles specifically due to the existing socialization process, the society expects male to play a certain role and female to play a certain role. Due to these role specifications, predominantly not only the women, they specifically assign certain roles to the women. Thus, the women play productive, reproductive, and the role assigned by the society. These are the three roles majoritarily women were played. When we talk about the reproductive role, it is not only about bearing of the child, as well as the productive roles, and they are part of the various production process, as well as the society assigned certain roles to the women. So those roles also the women play in the society. When we talk about the women's role in agriculture related and allied activities, those activities are well researched and documented by the various of the world's food productions. They contribute for preparing land for cultivation, to crop harvesting, livestock rearing, home gardening, fuel and fodder collection, and collecting minor forest produce for livelihood and food security. These are the majority of the roles the women they used to play. As well as I would like to give you one specific case study. When it comes to Southeast Asia, women contribute 90% of their labor for rice cultivation. From this, we could able to understand that majority of the agricultural activities are performed by the women. In Thailand, women are extensively engaged in agriculture as they carry out about 50% of the work involved in field, like in field crop cultivation, horticulture, plant production, as well as harvesting, and almost 80% in soil improvement, and about 90% of the work in inland fishing, and almost all the work in food preservation and food processing, as well as in mulberry tree cultivation and silkworm raising. These are the major work the women they perform in Thailand. Let us learn about the existing status of women's labor. Out of total population of 1,210 million persons, the rural population was 833.5 million. That is around 68.86%, and the remaining 377 million persons, that is 31.14%, live in urban areas. Thus, from this data, I have taken this data from Census of India. From this data, almost 2/3 of the population is still found in rural areas. Among the total workers of 481.7 million, the number of workers in rural areas were about 348 million, that is 72.37%, and the remaining 133 million workers, that is 27.60%, were in urban areas. participation rate was almost 42% in rural areas against only 35.3% in urban areas. This document the women's role in during sowing session, pre-sowing activities as well as post-harvest activities. When we talk about the pre-sowing activities, consist of land preparation, compost and farmyard manure, seed selection, seed preparation, seed management, seed sowing, nursery preparation, sowing seeds in the nursery, nursery maintenance, and transplanting seedlings from nursery to main farm, and fertilizer application. If we look at all these activities of pre-sowing, women contribute most of the activities except plowing of lands. Most of the plowing of lands in this 21st century is mechanized. So most of the mechanized activities are performed by the male members. So rest of the, wherever there is a very strenuous activities, those activities in the agricultural sector is performed by the female members. Once the pre-sowing activities are over, women contribute to post-sowing activities like weeding, like they have to scare the birds, then only they could able to save their crop, preparation of manure, hybridization of cotton and sunflower, and hand picking of worms and insects are also done by the women. When we talk about the female labor activities, when we look at all these female labor activities, we could able to, or we could able to easily come to know that most of the very strenuous activities are carried out by the female females, and mechanized activities mostly carried out by the male member. As well as once the once it starts the harvesting of crop, after harvesting the crop, women carry the bundles of harvested crops to the threshing floor. In the post-harvest process, women contribute numerous activities to make the harvested crop into the final one. Like for example, if you look at the post-harvest activities, they carry the harvested crops to the threshing floor. Once they took that harvested crop to the threshing floor, then most of the time the female, they use their own hands for threshing, and sometimes they may use machine also, and they have to do winnowing, grading, and they have to process. Once the process is over, processing of harvested crops gets over, then vending of agricultural commodities, care of storage structure. Once the post-harvest activities are over, the harvested crops, they need to store it in very safely. For example, some crops, in the particular season, they may not get the proper price to sell those crops. So they have to store those crops for selling whenever they get the good price. So care of storage structure, separating seeds, drying and cleaning of procedure, treating seeds and grains, these are the activities the women they are doing when it comes to post-harvest activities. Okay, these are the most of the activities are carried out by the women in the agricultural sector. What are the obstacles for women's growth? That we need to understand. Once we understand the obstacles for women's growth, then one could able to provide certain policy prescriptions to the government. Then government could take necessary measures to address women's issues. Castillo in 1977 argued that even such mechanization favors operations performed mainly by men, while the other operations were still operated by women manually. Even though there is an mechanization it's largely happening in the agricultural sector. Most of the mechanization process is like whenever there is a mechanization, it is happening in the agricultural sector. Most of the tools were used by the males in the agricultural sector. Mostly the women, they were manually doing all the agricultural activities. Thus, this adds burden to women labor while they work both on farm and off farm. So, it gives more burden to the women. Much of the technological advancements have created more employment for men, even displaced female labor in agriculture. So, if there is a more and more mechanization, it is giving more and more employment opportunities to the male members, and mostly it tries to displace the women members. This needs to be addressed. Even whenever there is we need to sensitize agricultural scientists about the women's role in the agricultural activities. Whenever there is an technological advancement, whenever there is advanced tools to address the various agricultural activities, it should address both the genders. They have to realize the activities like performed by the women in the agricultural sector. Accordingly, they have to make the tools to reduce the women drudgery rather than displacing the women from the agricultural sector. Thus, there is a structural changes in the cropping pattern. For example, this was documented by the Esther Boschrup in the African agricultural pattern in 1940s itself. During that time, due to the change in the cropping pattern and various structural changes in the various social structures, like for example, cultivating from food crops to cash crops and mechanized inputs in farms, have resulted in the withdrawal of the female agricultural labor force and have created an employment structure more biased towards the male labor force. This needs to be addressed. Next is that the existing studies clearly shown that the female labor absorption capacity of crops have significantly declined due to the shift in cropping pattern from paddy to coconut or rubber in states like Kerala. For example, when it comes to paddy, it's like women, they are predominantly, they are contributing for the paddy cultivation. Once there is a shift in cultivating from paddy crops to coconut crops, certainly the women's labor will be displaced, and mostly when we grow coconut, maybe the coconut farm, they may predominantly, it may mechanized, so it will displace the women labor. Then another study, it has clearly found that the shift in 1 acre of paddy to the coconut, look at it, could result in a decline in female employment by 43 human days. This was found by the existing study. One of the significant obstacles faced by the farm women is also lack of improvised knowledge on farming. That is, we need to, like most of the time, the women, they do more work but they get less pay. Here also, I have taken the existing study to make the learners to understand better. Women are almost half of the adult population, that we need to agree. They constitute 1/3 of the labor force but consume 2/3 of the world's working hours, yet earn only 1/10 of the income and own only 1% of the world property. This was documented by the United Nations in 1975 itself. Till now, there is not much changes in the existing data. Like female hourly wage rates in agriculture, this also we need to understand from the existing study. Female hourly wage rates in agriculture vary from 50% to 75% of male rates and are insufficient to overcome absolute poverty. This was documented by the previous planning commission. Most of the works performed by women in agriculture on family enterprise are unpaid. If they work in their own lands, most of the time it is unpaid labor. And sometimes the women, they work as a agriculture labor in some other field, and when they work as an agriculture labor in someone's field, they may not be paid like a male agriculture laborers. Though the work participation rate is an important measure to assess the gaps and verify whether it is narrowed down between genders, like we need to look into the remuneration and advancement gap between male and female workers that is still exists, that needs to be acknowledged. And most of the time when we talk about the remuneration, women workers are the losers. They mostly paid less than the male agriculture laborers. Second one is that when we talk about the technological advancement, when it comes to agriculture as a sector, the most of the technological advancements are gender neutral. When we talk about the gender neutral, we may not be acknowledging the existing gender differences. If we don't acknowledge the existing gender differences, then we develop tools, technology in a gender neutral manner instead of developing tools and tools in a gender neutral to address the issues of both male and female in the agricultural sector. For example, and few examples I have given to reduction in drudgery. We were talking about how to reduce the women's drudgery. Like field preparation, traditional technology is ploughing, single tine, kudal, kurpi or spade they used to field preparation. Instead, in an improved technology like tractor, power tiller, rack power operator, leveler, all those things we can be used. Like that here, what are the traditional technology we are using? That traditional technology, most of the time, it is giving drudgery to the female members. Instead, when they use the improved technology, when they train the women to use the improved technology, that will reduce the women's drudgery and they could able to work more in the agricultural sector without much strenuous physical activities. I hope the learners could able to understand what are the gender roles the women are performing in the agricultural sector and how to reduce the women drudgery specifically in the agricultural sector. In the next session, we could able to learn more about both the gender roles of male and female in the agricultural sector, as well as what are the drudgeries women facing in the agricultural sector and how to reduce the drudgery specifically in the agricultural sector. Thank you so much for listening in this session.